was tough to beat. As sailors, they were always feared. But as football players, well, the Buccaneer tradition has suffered. After 10 years in the NFL, Tampa Bay remains a struggling group of pirates. Swashbuckling certainly is not a term to describe a team that has only won 4 of their last 29 games. Even the Zebras agree. Lehman Bennett's Bucks are bad.
Hey, fellas, these guys are bad.
Horrible. Worst team I've ever
What
seen.
a disgrace.
They call themselves a football team?
Hey, you got a stick of gum?
No.
Just how tough are things for the Buccaneers? Well, late in today's game, trailing 42-6, Tampa scored a meaningless touchdown. Meaningless, that is, to everyone but the Bucs. They put on a celebration that even carried over to the sideline. Obviously, there's been precious little to cheer about for the men in orange this season. As for our guys in purple, they gave the 56,000 at the Dome today all sorts of things to cheer about, especially the...
Thank you. Connecting with Wade Wilson 9 times, making the Bucs a bit jitterish on D. Records are made to be broken. Just ask Matt Blair. Scott Studwell was the exclamation point in a defensive stand that held Tampa at bay virtually all day. We'll tackle this discussion later, along with a second look at violence in the NFL. Are quarterbacks in harm's way? If so, what could be done about it? Stay tuned and don't touch that dial. This can only be Vikings Tonight.
Vikings Tonight is brought to you in part by Midwest Federal, your good tree to come to for shelter since 1891. And by Bosch Tools, #1 worldwide in professional-grade power tools.
A laugher in the Metrodome? Could it really be the Vikings, Destiny's darlings, denied 4 of the last 5 games and heartbreaking turn of events in the final quarter? No need to adjust your audio. The final was indeed 45-13 over Tampa Bay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Rosen. It has been a long time, but yesterday the Vikings had a laugher.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
No, this isn't a nightmare. It's just the way things have gone the past few weeks until today. Heartbreak followed heartache, first against Washington, then New York, followed by Cincinnati. But today, fourth quarter frustrations were washed away in an orgy of scoring, a welcome relief.
I don't particularly care for those nail biters myself. It's kind of hard to go out there and do your job when you know you're pretty far ahead and the other team can't play, but I'd rather have that kind of success. It's a nice feeling going out there in the fourth quarter knowing you can't lose.
Ah, the fourth quarter, where a familiar face saw unfamiliar playing time and made the most of it. Who was that man?
Well, that must have been a masked man. It couldn't have been 23 doing that. But it felt good, you know. It felt good to get in the opening, to be able to run that far, you know. It's just a shame that I didn't get in the end zone. But, you know, we got the touchdown, and that made it all better.
Ah, the fourth quarter, where fans unaccustomed to a pad turned its attention to the bouncing ball. Bouncing off of walls is probably how Lehman Bennett feels.
We had another afternoon where we took a second-string quarterback and made him look like an all-pro. I don't know if he got 400 yards passing or not, but I know he got a lot. Threw the ball very well. We couldn't stop him on third down and couldn't move the ball like we needed to beat him, and really got dominated in this game.
Well, all good things and bad must end. At least Steve Young would hope so.
You know, we're obviously battling uphill really seems like every week, and it's hard. I mean, it's difficult to handle it all at once. I think my answer, and it has been really throughout the year, has been, come back and try to beat up the next person.
The memories of those fourth quarter losses for the Vikings, none too pleasant, are still fresh, and there are others, of course. That block punt against Cleveland, Clint Didier's controversial catch against the Redskins, and I don't know if this helps ease the pain, but I would imagine it was nice to look up at the scoreboard in the fourth quarter and see that you have the game pretty well wrapped up. Nice to win in a dull fashion, Scott, for once.
Yeah, I tell you, it's a big win for a couple of reasons. I think number one, it gets us back on our feet. It gives us some momentum going into the final 3 weeks of the season, and as you said before, it numbs some of the pain and disappointment that we've suffered through the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Greg, we heard Steve Young, the quarterback from Tampa Bay, talking about just trying to get it up again for next week. What is going on with that team? I know you have some good friends in that club. I mean, it has to be discouraging to play for Tampa trying to go out there and play football every Sunday.
Well, I think the nucleus of their problem, it starts up top in talking with some of the guys. You know, after losing Bo Jackson in the draft, going to play baseball, Tampa Bay is consistently going with a youth movement. And that's fine, but you've got to have some older players to have some continuity, and that's what they don't have right now. And they're going to continue to have problems until, you know, they let Jimmy Giles go, Kevin House, you know, guys who were mainstays, and now they're gone. They don't have the leadership, you know, and they just don't have the quality ball players.
In fact, House caught a touchdown pass there for the Los Angeles Rams today. Darren, all week you've heard, it should be easy for you guys. Playing Tampa Bay, you've had the last 8 weeks, you played 6 first-place teams. Was it difficult? Were you apprehensive at all about the way you were going to perform against the Bucs today, especially in the first quarter?
Well, I thought that we really didn't play that well in the first half. And I think the score was 14-6 at halftime, and I thought offensively that we were really sluggish. You know, the defense was playing pretty well, but offensively, I don't think we were playing well at all.
They threw a pretty basic defense at you, did they not? I mean, it seemed like you guys were going to throw the ball all day. They were giving it to you.
Well, Tampa Bay's always been a real basic team. You know, they line up in a 3-4 defense, and they don't really blitz a lot of people. They kind of back people off, and they just let you beat them with short passes, and sometimes you might hit a medium-range pass every once in a while also. But I think for the most part, you know, they laid back and they just let us take the game to them instead of trying to do something to get us out of our ball game.
Well, the Tampa Bay Bucs have allowed more yardage than any team in the National Football League. No one, in fact, ever laid a hand on Wade Wilson as the Vikings veteran backup quarterback racked up personal career highs against that porous Buccaneer defense. Wilson completed 22 of 33 passes for 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Wilson was making his second straight start for the Vikings. Tommy Kramer's injured right thumb was much better. Kramer wore protective gloves to warm up on the sidelines. He should be ready for the Packers next week, and Wilson acknowledged that the job should be his. And he came out of the blocks, as you mentioned, Darren, throwing the ball. It takes great concentration. Here's a catch of yours right here, over the middle.
Right. I don't know if this was more concentration or just catching the ball out of fear, because I knew I was going to get a hit, so I might as well catch the football.
You mentioned Tampa's defense really does leave a lot of room for the tight end, and the Vikings really exploited that today. It was a nice touch here by Wade Wilson to Steve Jordan for the touchdown.
Yeah, this is a real nice touch. I think Steve's caught about 3 passes similar to this where he runs a corner pair, and there he comes with a face full of purple dust there.
If Tampa was optimistic about coming in here and playing well, the first drive sure had to take a lot of steam out of them. In fact, you guys lead the National Football League in points scored in the first quarter, 129. Is this something that Jerry Burns has stressed, Darren, or is it something that just come about by your execution in the first quarter?
Well, it's something that we really haven't stressed. It's just something that we do. I don't know why we get off to such a fast start all the time, but I think it's good for our football team. You know, we're a young team, and I think it's good to get that momentum going and to really start out fast out of the blocks.
Greg, were you bored at all out there today? You had only, what, 2 punts?
Well, yeah, and they came the first half. But anytime I'm on the sideline the whole entire second half, that means that our offense is doing something right. I don't ever feel bad as long as we're scoring points.
We had a great average.
That's not what you told us.
Well, I lied. I mean,
you wanted 2 more. You mentioned Steve Jordan's touchdown catch, Darren. Well, you know, over the years, Steve has been snake bit when it's come to scoring touchdowns. For instance, last year he caught 68 passes, not 1 for a touchdown. So Steve wasn't exactly celebrating too early after that catch today.
To tell you the truth, that's why I didn't even want to get up, you know, because I said, gee, now watch, they'll probably mark this on the 1-foot line or something. And then when the ref came over and threw his arms up, and that was all I needed to know.
Career tackles ranked second only to the great Dick Butkus. On the Vikings, Scott Studwell ranked second to no one. Sorry, Matt Blair, but Studwell's 1,453rd tackle broke your Viking career record. Scott brought down James Wilder there, who was held to just 51 yards rushing today. Congratulations, Scott. What does that record mean to you?
Ask Greg.
He's the oldest guy on the football team. And eventually he had to break it.
The only reason that Scott broke the record, see, most offenses geared their game plan to run at Scott. They don't run away from him, you know, they just run directly at him and hoping like hell that they run by him, and usually they do. But he stuck around long enough, and he's been fortunate enough to get in the way on a lot of plays and pile on a lot of tackles. And that's how he did it.
That's right. A lot of cleat marks on this body.
This says it all, doesn't it? These guys. You have the bruises. You know, a lot of fans have asked, watch, you get the blood on your uniform from like the first quarter on. Now, is it something?
Wait a minute.
He cuts his finger just like wrestling. He cuts his
This is like
finger.
pro wrestling now.
And he wipes it all over his pants. I mean, this is before the game starts. This is in the locker room. He's got blood all over.
And then if that's not enough, he's got the little capsule in his mouth. You know, you pull something out and, you know.
Roll up your sleeve here for a second now. Come on.
No, we don't. Just a little boo-boo. Just a little boo-boo.
He's got war wounds
little
on there.
boo-boo. Scotty's got a little boo-boo.
Oh, he's got a good one. No.
You don't wear pads there?
No.
You don't need to do that.
Greg's
He
got
likes to
them all.
bleed.
It has to be a sign of your durability, though, in all seriousness. I mean, it has to take some satisfaction out of that.
Oh, it's very satisfying. But I think it's somewhat overshadowed because I think the win was so important to the team today. And it's, I think it's something that you can hang your hat on and something that you can look at somewhere down the road in the future and say, you know, this was quite an accomplishment. It just shows to prove you that if you do something long enough, you're bound to do something right. And it's.
Well, I think you're being very modest. You've done something right for a long time, Scott.
Well, it's nice, and it's, you know, I'm proud of it, and it's. But then again, it's if I could take those tackles and throw them all away and come home with a world championship, then obviously you know which one would take precedence. So. I think records are great for every individual, but it's a team sport, and if you don't do well as a team, then all the individual records are overshadowed.
This was the second straight week you faced a left-handed quarterback. Boomer Esiason at Cincinnati a week ago, Steve Young of the Bucs today. How do they compare? And do you think, for instance, Young would be a great quarterback on a better football team?
Well, he certainly doesn't have the supporting cast that like Esiason does. I think somewhere in the future he's going to be a fine quarterback. He's got 4.5 speed. He runs the ball extremely well. That's probably his best suit right now, and the fact that he does scramble so well, and he certainly presented some problems for us earlier in the game. But he doesn't have the great receivers. They got rid of Jimmy Giles. They got rid of Kevin House, and up until this point, they've been a one-dimensional football team. James Wilder has been their entire team. So he's got a ways to go by getting some better people surrounding him, but. I think he's certainly got the ability, and somewhere in the near future, I think he's going to be a good player for him.
We have an example of that. Young's ability to run from the pocket kept the Vikings defense honest in the first half. He uses the run really as a weapon, not as an act of desperation on this team, Scott.
He really does, and he's very quick to pull the ball down and take off running with it. And as you can see, I think he's their second leading rusher, and I think he's got over 600 yards rushing the football already.
7-3 Viking lead, and Wade Wilson went to Anthony Carter. Wade, as I mentioned, had a lot of protection today, Darren.
Yeah, a lot of protection. Anthony makes a great catch here. Unfortunately, we lost Anthony in the second half to a hip pointer, but we're hoping he'll be okay.
We'll need him by next week. Wilson Allen Rice, who quietly, game in, game out, comes up with the big plays.
Allen always seems to be in the right place at the right time, and here he is all alone, and he just scoots in for the touchdown.
Well, then Donald, what is it, Wk13? Is that the way he pronounces it, Greg?
Donald Wk13.
He kicked a 55-yard field goal.
And had about 10 yards to spare. You know, that's an interesting story because before, Tampa Bay's kicker was Obed Ariri, a close personal friend of Donald's. He invited him over to, you know, to come from Africa, and they went to Clemson. And, you know, it's a strange story. You know, Donald invited him to come down to kick, and heck, he took his job. But
are they still friends?
Yeah, real good friends, and he's got an awful strong leg as he demonstrated today.
Well, it's 14-6, and Darren, you mentioned earlier the Vikings did not really play that well in the first quarter, first half. Jerry Burns let you guys know that at halftime, did he not? Saying that Tampa Bay had outplayed you for the most part.
Well, he basically told us that Tampa Bay had won the first half, and that if we wanted to be a winning football team and be a successful team, that we had to go out and win the second half. And I thought we did win the second half pretty convincingly.
Is Bergie a good speech maker?
They're all
you can use is pretty good, I guess.
Burns' eloquent halftime speech worked. The Vikings took off on an 8-play, 84-yard drive. Again, with great protection, Wilson picked apart the Bucs secondary. Steve Jordan for 31 more yards right here.
I think Wade had practically all day to throw the ball. Steve, as usual, comes up with a big catch.
Alfred Anderson experienced the lows and highs of pro football. In this sequence, you'll see here nothing but clear sailing ahead on a screen pass here, Darren, but he dropped it.
He dropped it, but I think there's going to be a one right after this where he catches a touchdown pass. You know, Alfred felt as bad as anyone there that he dropped that ball.
You get in a situation like this, you just can't wait to get the ball again?
Well, the thing is, you just don't think about it. You know, you just go on to the next play, and luckily for Alfred, the next play had him catching a touchdown pass, in which he makes an even tougher catch and scores with the football. You know, and sometimes you wonder, how can he make that catch and then drop another ball that was really easy? But it happens that way sometimes.
All the time. You bet. 21-6 Vikings. The Vikings did not have to run the ball very much today, but here's one for the highlight reel. The longest run in Ted Brown's career, 60 yards. It looks like he did score here, too.
It definitely looked like he scored. You know, I think Ted was pretty upset that he didn't. But you see Alfred Anderson zoom by him right there, which kind of showed you how fast Ted is.
Teddy was safe. There's Chuck Nelson. Speaking of long field goals, we'll get back to Teddy here in a minute. Chuck came through here, Greg.
Boy, he did. I think Chuck has been waiting on a kick of this type, you know, the right situation. And I think I was more excited for Chuck than he was. He hit the ball very well, you know, 2 field goals today, and did a great job on his kickoffs today, and he's just having a good year.
It was a 53-yarder. That's the longest of his career. Now, Darren, getting back to Ted Brown, during the interview, Teddy said, the worst thing that could happen in that run to me is I did not want to get caught from behind.
Well, he didn't really get caught from behind. You know, there was a guy there, and he was weaving back and forth trying to score, and Alfred ran in front of him, tried to block the guy. The guy just barely tackles him, but it looked like Ted was in the end zone.
He is
really did.
Valuable man to have down the stretch.
Yeah, he is.
Coming up next, we'll talk about the role special teams played today. A key member of that squad, of course, is Joey Browner, and it's always a family affair for the Browner brothers when the Vikings beat either Cincinnati and Brother Ross or Tampa and Brother Keith here. And what could be next? The Browner Bowl?
I think about it all the time because, you know, that's all I have on this earth is my family, and when we're together, we're just out there just showing that we're the best in our profession, or else we wouldn't be here. And I just go out there and do the best I possibly can and let my mother see I'm on the team.
The Vikings also made big strides today in improving the play of their special teams. Jerry Burns said after last week's effort against Cincinnati, our special teams, quote, stunk the joint out, especially in our coverage. Did you stress it a little bit more in practice this week, Greg?
Well, I think mental preparation more so than the physical aspect. I mean, because we're this late in the season, if we don't know how to run down the field and cover and things like that, it was, you know, there were mostly mental breakdowns, and as a result, Tom Batter put a lot of time in this week, and as a result, it showed.
Well, Joey Browner had a lot to do with that, as we're going to take a look at here. When he's in that gunner position, as you call it, running down the field, he is the best perhaps in the National Football League at that, and he has not been in that role that much this season.
Well, Joey's been banged up a lot of the year, and we've been trying to save him for defense, and you know, when he's there, just like you say, he's the best in the business, and no one can stop him. Even 2 guys can't stop him.
This is how he made it to the Pro Bowl last year, too.
Yeah, and he'll probably make it again.
Here's a 57-yarder here. Do you want to look at this one?
Yeah, you know, let's slow that down. That's right. Let's run it back. But there again, you know, Carl Lee is down, Joey Browner is down. Those guys did a great job. You know, Jim Huff with the snaps. But on our kickoff coverage, we had 3 kickoffs inside the 20-yard line, and we haven't had that in a long time around here. Chuck Nelson did a great job kicking the ball off. Neil Guggemos had 3 tackles, just activated off of injured reserve, and the whole gang on special teams. You know, we made a commitment, and we went out, and I think we did a job today.
Joy is particular. He uses that tackle a lot. He goes up high. I mean, he gets a hold of that guy, and he doesn't let him go.
He's so strong. You know, Joey has a black belt in karate, and he has to have a lot of strength in his hands, and once he grabs a guy, he's not going to turn him loose.
Well, special teams are a different breed. As wild as it appears, it's called, I guess, controlled violence, unlike some of the things that are happening in the National Football League today, where some players seem out of control. By now, you've seen this play probably hundreds of times. The Packers' Charles Martin was suspended by Commissioner Pete Rozelle for dumping Jim McMahon on his shoulder long after the interception. The Redskins' Charles Mann was fined $2,500 for this hit coming up to the head on Green Bay's Randy Wright. Mann was quoted as saying, "I've been robbed. It was a legitimate hit." How about it? Did Rozelle's punishment fit the crime in both those cases, guys?
I think in McMahon's case, I think it was. That's a questionable call, the other one against Charles Mann. But I think the one that most people are going to look at today, if they saw the highlights, the shot that Otis Wilson from the Chicago Bears, cheap shot at Louis Lips, knocked the guy out. I mean, you know, that's a flagrant foul, and he should have been thrown out of the game.
You say should have been thrown out of the game. They're not doing that very often. Let's face it. I mean, what's it going to take, and is it getting out of hand, Scott? You play the game as tough as anyone. Now, what do you think is going on around the National Football League? Would you like to see them strengthen the rules a little bit?
I don't really know what they can do. Obviously, they're all very isolated incidents. Generally, they happen with players that are very high-key individuals. Like Greg said, the Charles Mann incident, I think that was wrong. But You look at the Martin incident, that was a flagrant foul, and I think the commissioner came down on him hard, and justifiably so. And there isn't a place for it. Obviously, it injures people. It can shorten people's careers. It can even end people's careers. So there isn't a place for it. They should obviously be kicked out of the game. If the suspension isn't enough when it gets in their pocketbook, maybe the players will finally learn.
Well, in Charles Martin's case, I think it's, what, 15 grand. He's missing 2 games. Darren, you're on the receiving end of a lot of that. You're shaking your head, yes.
Yeah, because I'm the hittee most of the time, but not the hitter.
Have you noticed any difference since you got in the league about late hits, cheap shots, not just from yourself, but from other players on the Vikings or other teams?
I don't think there's really that many of them, but I think one of the things that you can do is say if you hurt somebody and he's out for 6 weeks, then you should be out for 6 weeks.
Well, that's what we mentioned last week on an eye for an
I
eye.
really like that. You know, especially since I'm the person that takes most of the punishment most of the time. I sure would like to see somebody else. I mean, if they put me out for say 6 weeks because they gave me a cheap shot, and I think they should sit down and wait till I'm better before they can come back out there and play again.
That's a good point.
If they should let them come back out there and play again at all.
Quarterbacks seem to be, of course, the most visible ones who get injured. Scott, Jack Lambert once said, well, maybe we should put dresses on them, I mean, protect them. Do they need any more protection in this league?
Well, some of them might look good in dresses. You know? Well, I think obviously they're the most vulnerable because they're the most open player on the field. A lot of times they're in the motion of throwing the football. They're very unprotected at times. But it's hard to say, where do you draw the line? As a defensive player, obviously you want your quarterback to have all the protection in the world, but who cares about the opposing quarterback? Sure. So I think it's a very hard decision to make, but something I think they certainly need to address. But it's a violent game, let's face it, and there's going to be violent acts. And as long as they're not flagrant, it's just part of the game.
Punters, of course, get all the protection in the world, so we don't have to address that subject with you.
Who cares if the punter gets hurt?
Yeah, well.
We do. Remember Cleveland?
Yes, that's right. Very good. Coming up next, the ongoing saga of the Vikings playoff hopes. A look ahead here on Vikings Tonight. 3.
Right now on paper it certainly is. They're not the team that we played 10 weeks ago. I think their defense has improved dramatically. Their offense, I think Randy Wright's playing much better for them. They're certainly going to be a test. None of them are easy. And Green Bay, I think, has turned their program around somewhat. They're certainly not world beaters right now, but they're a lot better football team than we saw the first time, and they'll certainly be a challenge for us.
And I guess you can expect just about anything there. As I mentioned, the weather, Greg, in particular, the kicking game could really be affected next week.
Well, I think the kicking game is going to be the deciding factor because Green Bay special teams have improved a whole heck of a lot. Elder Greco is kicking the ball very well. Stanley, their punt returner, you know, he had 2 big punt returns against Detroit. So Joey Browner and the rest of the guys, we've got a challenge coming ahead of us in Green Bay.
Darren, you going to send a telegram to Lawrence Taylor to help the Giants out tomorrow night to go up and beat up the 49ers?
I'm just thinking about playing in Lambeau Field in December. Now, why couldn't we have played down there in, when did we play
September.
in September, when it was nice and warm? Instead, we play here in the Dome, and now we have to go play there at Lambeau Field.
It's like playing Tampa
in December.
That's right. Well, it will be a fun afternoon, at least for the fans in Green Bay. You know that. That's always that way in Lambeau Field. And we'll return next Sunday night with all the flavor of a football Sunday in Green Bay right here on the Vikings Tonight. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Vikings Tonight.